What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and today is December 7th of 2022. Well, folks, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are, because in today's video, I want to spend some time to talk about what very well may be one of the biggest comments we've gotten from traditional finance that tells us about the future of cryptocurrencies. And that is the recent comments on the CNBC interview with JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. Now, for those of you who have been watching the channel as far back as 2017, we've been very critical of Jamie Dimon. And I'm not here so much to focus on what he said during the interview, but what he didn't say, and how over the last 5 years, traditional finance is really starting to set the stage to get in big on crypto, especially after this fallout that we've gone through. And outside of that as well, we've got a sponsored interview with Piers Ridyard from Radix, where we're going to be talking about the upcoming RadFi event that's hitting tomorrow that'll lead people to rethinking the way DeFi can be built. And on top of that, talking about the general market sentiment. So if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, stay tuned for the interview. You won't want to miss it. Let's go ahead and kick things off. Now, I don't want to so much play the video here. You guys can check it out if you want over on CNBC. But the big thing I want to focus on are some of the short comments that he made. Again, Jamie Dimon came out critically, and I think most people would probably watch the interview and see it in a negative light, that he doesn't see value in the crypto space as a whole. And to be honest, there is some truth to that. For example, he called a lot of the altcoins in the space pet rocks, essentially meaning on a fundamentals basis that there is no fundamental value to these projects, that there is no chance to turn these into revenue generating protocols, and that a lot of them should go to zero. And to a degree, I think he's right. There is a lot of fluff out there. There are a lot of protocols that didn't think about long-term how they could benefit the token holders, and essentially are just basically living off of the false perceived value that they are somehow worth something because someone's paying for them. But I'd provide one critical point to that statement. There's also, I could probably name 100 major publicly traded companies, in fact, probably hundreds of technology companies out there that have consecutively lost money for the last decade, continue to dilute their shares, and trade at multi-billion-dollar valuations, and they sure as hell don't pay any dividend or yield. So I think that this is something that, again, value investors are a bit hypocritical on. While they have exposure to a lot of these companies, they also will criticize crypto and say that there's no value. But that isn't really what I want to focus on here. It's a small little tidbit. Just wanted to be a bit non-biased and showcase that I can see where some of his points are. Plus, he also spoke of a macro recession. And I completely agree that because of inflation and the Fed's tightening, we are going to go into an economic slump in 2023. So these are the points that I can kind of see where he's coming from. But there was a really interesting statement that he said within the video, and that is that he still believes, even though there are these criticisms of crypto, that there is still potentially room for blockchain and Web3. Now let's just take a step back here and listen to what he didn't say. Right? He's obviously showcasing support for blockchain. That's kind of the go-to financial statement for a long time. But he said that he also believes that there is value in Web3. Now, you all know Web3 is not some corporate blockchain. Web3 is decentralized finance. Web3 is NFTs. It's decentralized protocols and decentralized applications that are going to change the way we interact with the web. But there's also a much bigger thing that Jamie Dimon didn't say, and that is Bitcoin. Now, if you guys remember, if you've been watching the channel for a long period of time, you will remember back 5 years ago, it's our biggest video when it comes to views, and that is the Curb Your Corruption video where Jamie Dimon was saying Bitcoin was used in North Korea, it was used by criminals, and that was pretty much the only use case. It was used for money laundering and terrorists and everything you can name under the sun, right? And at the same time, JP Morgan got slapped with one of the biggest money laundering charges in history. And on top of that, I think just a couple months to a year later or so, one of the biggest submarines that they have under their asset balance sheet was trafficking, I think, hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion of cocaine. But look, even though Wall Street and the bankers might be doing a little bit of meddling here and there in the drug market and laundering a bit of money here and there, I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the fact that he had such a harsh opinion of Bitcoin back in 2017. And in this video, he didn't even sputter a word against it. Now, what does that tell me? That tells me that Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan are going to start offering services to their clients for Bitcoin. They're going to start giving exposure to ETH and BTC, financial products, financial assets, financial vehicles to take capital and allocate it. I think that during this restructuring period that we're going through with FTX, with Celsius, with BlockFi, with Gemini, with Genesis, all of these players that are down in the dumps have crushed a lot of the market demand for crypto right now, have left prices on a much lower range. It's left a lot of the IP and technology plays in the space at much cheaper valuations. And I think Jamie Dimon has his eyes on the prize. And not saying this is a good thing. I, to be completely frank, don't want Jamie Dimon or JP Morgan on in the crypto space. But I got to tell you guys, from a long-term support perspective for Bitcoin, this is again a sign that slowly but steadily, the big traditional financial institutions, they see blood in the streets and they are likely going to strike. So I think there's a couple things we need to know about here. One, this likely means that we may, in the future, be able to get that institutional buy-side pressure to crypto that really could suspend the next bull market, especially if we start to see the Fed pivoting and starting to lose trust, therefore, in the dollar. And second off, we need to be aware here of these companies stepping in, which companies they're investing in, which ones do they have a stakeholding in, and avoid them like the plague. We do not want to support traditional financial institutions here unless they have solid good intentions and aim to maintain trustless decentralized code. Now, this is where we're going to dive into our conversation with Piers here, because Piers, I think, provides a really good perspective about what we can learn here from the past year when it comes to DeFi. And on top of that as well, talking about the long-term ramifications of radically rethinking DeFi and just what can be built here when we think about it that way. So we're going to go ahead and kick off the interview. If you guys enjoy it, drop a like, and let's go ahead and chat with Piers. Alrighty, everyone. So in today's sponsored interview, we are finally getting to sit down yet again with Piers Ridyard, who is the CEO of RDX Works, one of the leading teams on top of the RDX protocol, one of our favorite layer one plays here on the DataDash channel. I've gotten the privilege to know Piers since as far back as the last bear market in 2018. And we are yet again back in the same spot on the lower end of things. So I got to ask Piers, how are you guys doing? How are you holding up? And how is the bear market feeling, man? How far are we?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're through, personally, I think we're through max pain. I think that's sort of that everyone's now waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I think that's past. But like, really, bear markets are they always say bear markets are for building, and like, having been through several, I think that the interesting ideas generally come out during bear markets. Right. Obviously, you see less people coming into the crypto space. You see a lot of dropout. You see the people who sort of like understood the mission, understood like why this is important and why the technology is intrinsically important beyond just speculation. What it does for humanity, what it does for the safety of individuals, and for the ability for people to protect their wealth, and for the ability for people to have more opportunity for what they own, and making it sort of more valuable, all that kind of stuff. And then combine that with also all of the things that happened with NFTs and the creator economy. I think that's such a wonderful starting point. Right now, I think that the creator economy is still undervalued as a part of the as a part of the global economy. But when you look at like the successes of people like Mr. Beast or like Kim Kardashian or stuff like that, there's clearly a huge amount of value in being able to combine these sort of like audiences with products, and digital products are going to be a big part of that as well. So I think there's like all of these like components and ideas that were really good, like the technology and DeFi and Web3 and like metaverse and like audience building and community building. And now what you're getting is a maturing, right? Sort of like those things have been picked. They were the grapes, and now like it's been squashed down a bit and we're making some juice, and now we need to make wine out of it. And that maturity process turns, I'm going to stretch this metaphor as long as I can. So like the bear market is good. And everyone who is here now, everyone who is listening to this video and is watching your channel and still here, right in the middle of the bear market, in the lowest of lows, this is where the true opportunity comes out. This is where you learn the skills and hone the skills and start to do the pattern matching recognition that is going to be critical for the next phase.
Yeah, I wanted to speak a bit about that, Piers, because you guys have still been nonstop growing. You've been continuing to expand the ecosystem. I try to keep as active as I can to the blog, and I know we've got a couple big things to talk about today. Tomorrow, we're going to be having the upcoming event at the time of the interview uploading. The next day, we're going to basically be having on the 8th of December, Radfi, which is this huge build up towards really, I think, for the first time, fully demonstrating how everything within the Radix ecosystem comes together, which you guys have been building on for years since we got to meet in beforehand. And on top of that as well, really seeing what's possible to build with Scripto, I think. And I think that's going to be very huge. So I'm really curious, I know we'll talk a little bit about that later on. And also that kind of plays in, again, as you well, into seeing the frameworks that are being built now that are going to allow for that value creation process. So I'm curious to ask you, Piers, how have the past couple of months been, say, last 6-12 months, since we really started working actively together? And what are the next 12 months going to look like for you guys during this building phase?
That's a great question. So what our plan was, what our objective was 12 months ago, we actually launched Scripto, which is the programming language that we created specifically for building DeFi and Web3 in DeFi and Web3. And we built it from the point of view of actually, customer research. We spent 2 years working with DeFi developers and Web3 developers and getting feedback about all of the things that sucked about building with Solidity and why are there only 20,000 DeFi developers in the world, smart contract developers in the world, when all of this opportunity and money's there, but the developers aren't coming in, all of that stuff. And so we set out, when we launched Scripto, we were like, okay, having seen successful protocols build and failures happen, we know the number one most important thing is your community, and specifically your developer community. Right. And so our objective over the last 12 months was to build a phenomenal developer community, one that wasn't paid, that we're not just going out and being like, yo, come build on our protocol and we'll pay you $200,000 or $500,000, which is what everyone else seems to be doing, which is a terrible way of motivating people. I think everyone else thinks that people are coin operated, but they're not. You start forwards with mission forwards. This is the best place possible to build Web3 and DeFi. And we've really worked at doing that. If you want to be successful, this is your best choice, rather than going, we're kind of the same as everyone else, but we'll pay you some more.
Come to our chain, come temporarily.
That's such bullshit. You're not going to get good outcomes from that. So we were like, okay, we're going to build an incredible developer community. And what are the things that we care about that? The first is our programming language growing month on month in terms of the number of developers that are actually trying it? And we've now got over 5,000 developers that are learning Scripto. Right. That puts us ahead of, I think, every other layer 1 protocol at this stage. Our smart contracts don't go live until Q2 next year. And we are miles ahead of where every other layer 1 was at this stage, 6 months before, say.
I have to tell you, Piers, looking at all the layer 1s that I was kind of getting pushed during the last bull market from DOT, Solana. It took ages to be able to get to that status. You guys are really seeing continued growth during the bear market. You're still seeing people who are getting eager to test out Scripto and see what's possible.
Right. We have 136 projects that have announced on community websites to go live when Babylon drops. And what you have to remember is this is before, this is 6 months before Solana went live with their first ledger. Exactly. 6 months before Avalanche went live with their first ledger, and the numbers that we're already doing look better than they had 12 months afterwards. Yeah. And so that's I think that's a really encouraging sign. And the other thing is what's the nature, what's the quality of the ecosystem that you're building in terms of the community, right? Because one of the things that I saw in Ethereum was the opportunity for serendipity that was created within the community, because the community was friendly. Like people wanted to help each other out. Like it felt like you were coming in amongst some friends. It wasn't like, oh, you're going to steal my idea. It's like, oh yeah, let's talk about this. Like DAOs sound interesting. Yeah. I've got an idea for a DAO. Let me talk about my idea for a DAO, right? Like rather than being like, I got this idea for a DAO, I'm not going to tell you about it because you might steal it from me. It's like that like
completely different mentality.
And so it's like that sharing and openness is actually how you build, like this is the basis for open source code in the first place. And like the way that open source code is so brilliant is because of the ability to build on the ideas of others and improve and iterate and share. And like in these early stages, that's what these industries are. They have to be built by people who are in it from an open-minded point of view. It's like, we're all going to be successful. Let's help each other be successful. And then we can learn, much quicker. Like, again, I keep talking about Mr. Beast. I've been watching a lot of Mr. Beast.
Yeah. We need more Mr. Beast energy in the world for sure. No, I mean, like, right. I think one thing that I'm curious to ask you, Piers, like overall, like on this topic of all the exciting things that people are building. Again, I understand you don't want to play too much favorites to anything. I think there's a lot of really exciting projects out there. We can't name them all, but what are some of the really interesting either use cases or revelations you've seen from what the community has built so far? Because I think, again, I know we'll see a decent amount of RadFi, but I'm curious to hear what's really the one that's really hit home for you.
So RadFi we won't be talking about projects specifically. We'll be talking, like RadFi is much more about the overall vision, and like we'll talk about that in a little bit. But from the point of view of projects that I think are interesting, it's actually like the quality that's coming out is the thing that I look at. So I people are experimenting in ways that like took ages to mature within Ethereum. And so one application I saw, like people are building, and this was just a community competition entry, built like a under collateralized lending protocol where you using soulbound NFTs as credit rating scores that then had like this secondary like reputation based system associate in addition to how the lending protocol worked. And like that's complex. It's like if you look at Aave, it's like going, I'm going to take Aave and then I'm going to take an entirely extra principle and I'm going to make these two things interact around like finance. That's a really complicated thing to do. And someone did it casually of a week and wow. Submitted code that was legitimately could run. And so I always talk about Scripto and the Radix engine, and the Radix engine being a little bit like the games engine from like back in the day when gaming got started, Unity and Unreal. The games engine changed the games industry. What didn't happen was after the games engine came in, the games didn't get quicker. They got more complicated, as in they didn't come out more quickly. Like they got much bigger in terms of the imagination. The scope of the game increased. And what happened was gaming became bigger than music, TV, and film combined, because gaming went from this like cottage, like side thing where people were like playing on
into a massive media industry to something beyond. We don't even know where gaming will be in 5-10 years from now.
Right. Gaming's probably going to eat almost every other entertainment industry you can think of, because the game's engine is so powerful. Like you can now build movies in it, right? Anyone who's watched Love, Death, Robots on Netflix, that's an
Unreal or Unity. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So we see the same Cambrian explosion occurring as a result of Scripto. And so it's like, I can point to particular projects I love. There's some really cool dexes. Some people are doing things with concentrated liquidity that Uniswap v3 doesn't even do, that I think is incredibly interesting. And we're going to see dexes, we're going to see lending protocols, we're going to see all the things that you see on Ethereum sort of replicated in the Radix ecosystem. But the advantage here isn't that. The advantage here is the fact that you can build things with Scripto and the Radix engine because of the guarantees you get around security and safety and the ease of being able to pick it up, that you just wouldn't even comprehend attempting
Within
in
Solidity, yeah.
Solidity.
Yeah.
Not because you can't, because like technically Solidity is, you know, Turing complete, but because you kind of be insane to build something so complicated with something that is so fragile.
I always use the example, I think, like, and the developer, like, time and stuff. I think Uniswap V2 was a couple, like, it was up to maybe 10,000 lines of code or a couple thousand lines of code. You guys were able to show with, Radiswap, right? This was what the CTO Russell was
Right.
showcasing in that video back a couple months ago. And that was really the aha moment for me, that you could do that in a little under anywhere from around 100 to 200 lines of code.
Yeah. So it's like
And
209 lines of code.
yeah, and as you mentioned, like, this, I think, is going to allow this sped up developer time is going to allow for, as you mentioned with the application earlier about using soul-bound NFTs to do under collateralized lending. I've been really eager for this because DeFi as itself is this over collateralized little small niche bubble of what DeFi really can become. And as you guys have been talking about, you're talking about the multi-trillion-dollar focus of bringing traditional finance into the space, and they're not going to be waiting 3-5 years to get an application like this built or seeing if it's going to work. They need to have something that can be deployed quickly, and if it hits, then it can create a ton of value and you can build on top of it with the blueprint framework that you guys have for Radix. So that, I mean, that's so exciting, man, to see that you guys have had so much traction and that it's not really slowing down, that there is a lot of building going on. One thing I wanted to ask you, Piers, is that we do have this big event, RadFi, coming up, and I know there are some people in like the Dash Report group, like people who are really big fans of the channel, and they like Radix a lot as a project. And myself, who have been trying to like get tidbits of information of what's going to be shown. But I think you hit on it pretty good earlier, that it's going to be this kind of overlay of what Radix has really built. So maybe could you dive a little bit into it without spoiling too much?
Sure. So like, I think that the overriding way in which the industry has worked so far has been, we have a tech demonstration. Let's make that tech demonstration faster, right? So like Ethereum, like Bitcoin, Ethereum came out and was like, you can make smart contracts. We don't know what people are going to do with them, but you can make smart contracts. And then everyone started building these applications. And the first problem that was apparent, not actually the first problem, but the first problem that was apparent was that suddenly Ethereum was being used too much and now it had slowed down. And so then what you got was continuous copycat chains, which were just going, we're going to take everything that's great about Ethereum and we're going to copy it, and we're just going to like change the consensus layer and we'll make it faster, right? What no one has actually done is gone, what are we actually trying to do here, right? We are trying to radically change the way that wealth is owned and operated, and how money is owned and operated, and how value is transferred, and what actually can be categorized as value in the first place. Like, and then, you know, there's all of these concepts of privacy and identity and all this stuff that goes together, and you mash it all together and you suddenly have this concept of the digitally sovereign self that has all of these opportunities across like a you know, the superhighway of the asset superhighway rather than the information superhighway, right? And so like, what do we actually need to do to make everyday people feel like they can access that? Because right now we are so far from that. If we explore ourselves in the heart of hearts and we go, yeah, MetaMask, that's never going to be okay for like my mum.
Yeah.
Right? Like private key management and seed phrase management.
Bridging chains and like, I mean, the user experience in crypto is still a decade later. It's awful.
Right. You know, go use Curve. Yeah. It's like, are you joking? Like, that's not that and like and actually DeFi Summer I think made it worse, because I think DeFi Summer, a lot of these protocols were designed almost to be purposefully hard to use. It was almost like a badge of honor if you're degen enough to be able to understand how Yearn vaults worked or whatever. Right. And like, you know, user experience was thrown out the window completely. It's like almost antithesis of user experience. And that was okay because everyone was making lots of money. Right. The thing is that that's not okay for the bigger game that's at play here, which is like reinvent the entire global financial system and make it better for the individual and give them back sovereignty over what they own and how they transact with the world. Like, let's start with that. But that means that you are starting with the user experience. Like, it is a user experience problem. Like, even scalability is a user experience problem. Like, scalability sucks because it sucks for the user, because they're paying for things. But like, it's not the only category of user experience problems that are emerging as a result of how you build in Ethereum, how you build in Avalanche, how you build on even Aptos or Sui. Like, all of this is like bad thinking, because what has happened is they've gone, okay, well, we've got this technology already, let's just like work out how to improve what we already have. And what Radix has done since it started was, what's the end state we're trying to get to, and how do we design for that and make it a human end state, rather than make it something that only like geeks and like people and degens are really going to be like fine with, and everyone else is just going to look at in shock and horror.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues I've ran into, is that crypto still hasn't gotten out of its own bubble. And it's unfortunately led itself to its own detriment because of that. It's this exclusive club, and it's highly focused on market, asset performance and stuff. It's very cyclical, right? There's bull markets, heavy bear markets. I mean, this bear market has been proof of that. I think that what we need now more than ever, if you look at how DeFi's handled this entire storm, it's from what exists, it's operating as intended. There is no lack of whether or not, do we trust the Aave protocol or Uniswap to still give me a proper swap or have my funds? LPs are still using the protocols. And now it's just a matter of seeing like, hey, for the value that has been created, how could we multiply that? How could we essentially give those developers the tools to go out and build new applications that'll build a much bigger wave, S curve of adoption for DeFi? And I think
like Aave and Uniswap are like Doom.
Yeah.
Right? If we're going to
go back to the game analogy,
right? Like, they're like Doom and Tetris. Like, they're really addictive, great examples of what could be done as a computer game. But what happens if you unshackle that from the complexity and how long you had to spend just working out how to do a rendering engine, or like how long it took to work out how to do the pixels, like all of that. Get rid of that and give people this incredible power to build and express themselves. What happens then? And that for me is what the Radix question is like, what happens when you make an industry able to build and innovate in a way that they weren't able to before, because of all of the constraints that we don't see, that are every day a team sits down and spends 80 to 90% of their time worrying about security, rather than going, how do we make this amazing for users? What happens then?
Yeah, I think that's going to be huge, Piers. Like, the saved developer time, it's such a great asset, because the cost of engineering for practically any software company or project is huge. And to be able to make that time more valuable, I think, is probably one of the only things that is going to save crypto at this point, with how much cost goes into building, like a core Solidity app, from auditing, from actually getting engineers. So I'm excited, man, to see what you guys can build. More importantly, I'm excited to really, again, get a full visual grasp of what you guys are putting together. So I just want to let you guys know, if you haven't already, one of the best things you can do if you're interested, if you're still here at this point, listening to Piers and I ramble on about where we see DeFi going in the next couple of years and what Radix is doing. If you guys are really interested, there is a link in the description. It'll take you over to Radix's YouTube channel. And I recommend, if you guys can, set a reminder for the RadFi event that's going to be up tomorrow on the 8th. And, listen to what the team has to offer. And again, like, if you guys find that you're as excited as I am and many people in the DataDash community are, I think you'll find that it's going to be really exciting what Radix is offering with Scripto, save developer time, increased security, scalability. I just think, again, man, what you guys have been doing and stuff, it's been a long journey. I know, like, as much as the next person, how difficult it is just to get, just see to the vision, get something across the finish line. But I mean, what you guys are doing on like a protocol level is another challenge, man. So I think what you, Dan, Russell, so many people from the team are doing is amazing. And all the people in the community, they've done a great service as well, getting the word out. So I'm excited.
And I would say to anyone who is like on the fence about tuning in tomorrow on the 8th of December, if you're familiar with Radix, you're going to see things that you haven't seen before. And if you're into crypto, you're going to see things that I think reframe the way you think about what a public ledger can be. It isn't just what we've talked about here. There's going to be some extra things in there as well to get people excited.
So I think that's the first time I've gotten like goosebumps on like a Zoom call. I'm genuinely excited. I've heard the production quality is going to be good and everything. Talking to the team, and I don't know, man. I'm excited to see it. So yeah, guys. And again, I'll leave the link down below in the description. If you guys enjoyed the interview, definitely consider dropping a like. It was great to have you on, man. Like it's definitely something we got to do more often, Piers. I'm excited to get to catch up with you more often, man. And I know, just to let you guys know, I've had some people ask me about this. We will be getting Dan on in the future. So
Yep.
Dan's gonna like definitely dive into the tech side of things, really showcase what he's been building, maybe even show also like his duplication of Twitter and stuff. I really been eager to chat to him about that, watching some of the live streams over the past year. But anyways, man, Piers, thank you so much for making the time, man. Always a pleasure to have you on here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Nicholas. And yeah, speak to you soon.